So as we discussed, the two leaders of the Protestant Reformation are Martin Luther, who proposed justification by faith, okay? Justification by faith. You have to actually believe in God if you want to access heaven. And John Calvin, who proposed the idea of double predestination, which means that God has already decided who's going to hell, who's going to heaven, and therefore you have to prove it to yourself by working really hard, making a lot of money, and not spending it, okay? And then all this money goes to the bank, which allows for the growth of the Dutch Republic. All right, the Protestant Reformation will have many major effects on the world. It will lead to something called the 30 Years' War, when the Protestants will fight the Catholics. And this will lead to the death of millions and millions of people. In fact, this is the deadliest war in Europe right before World War I, okay? Yeah, the war is deadly. It lasts for a long time, 30 years. It will kill millions of people. Because of the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church is under attack. So what they decided to do is they decided to set up a secret society, basically an intelligence agency called the Jesuits. This is Loyola. You may have heard of Loyola University. So they just go around the world and set up a lot of universities and schools. But their main mission is to infiltrate Protestant societies and try to overthrow the government and try to make them more Catholic, okay? In response, so this is the system of the Jesuits. Okay? And in response, the Protestants will set something called the Freemasons. Okay, we'll discuss this later on, right? But so throughout history at this time, there's a secret battle going on between the Jesuits and the Freemasons. And they're using all sorts of really nefarious, evil techniques, including, as we discussed, traumatizing young children so they could be spies to infiltrate other groups. Okay? Because remember, at this point in history, people believe in God. So they're going to ask you, do you swear to God? And you have to, okay? And so you have to have secret identities if you are to pass their tests. Okay, so one of the crucial battlegrounds between the Jesuits and the Freemasons, the Protestants, is England. Okay, Henry VIII, what he will do is he will split off from the Pope, because the Henry VIII, like most monarchs in Europe, they want to maintain their independence, their autonomy. When he dies, Queen Elizabeth I will inherit the throne, and at this point in history, there are a lot of Catholics who want to see her overthrown. So she launches this massive campaign to persecute Catholics. This will lead to many, many battles, crises between the Catholics and the Protestants. James II is a Catholic king, and the Protestant nobility don't want that. So what they will do is they'll conspire against him. In 1688, they will invite the Dutch aristocrat, William of Orange, into England to become the king. And this will lead to something called the Glorious Revolution, where now authority passes to Parliament. What Parliament will do is charge something called the Bank of England, which is, again, it's a private bank with the power of state. They can print money, okay? And this solves a huge problem because before, what happened is these private bankers would lend money to monarchs. The problem with that is the monarch could die, the monarch could be overthrown, the monarch could lose a war, the monarch could just decide not to pay you back, okay? But now, if it's Parliament that's borrowing the money, the people always have to pay you back, okay? Unless England is destroyed as a nation, your loan to the nation will always be guaranteed. And this is what will allow England to become an empire. So the great conflict between England and France, of course, is the Napoleonic Wars, where Napoleon is about to conquer Europe, and Britain cannot have that, okay? Britain is a naval power, and if Napoleon is able to establish an empire in Europe, then England won't be able to trade with Europe. So what England will do is finance 7 wars against Napoleon. And they can do that because they have the Bank of England, which is able to borrow unlimited amount of money from the future as well as across space, okay, across time and space. That's how they're able to defeat Napoleon. Napoleon defeated England 6 times. But England didn't really care because, first of all, England wasn't fighting the war, it was just financing the wars. And England could not stop fighting the wars because otherwise it would go bankrupt, okay? Does that make sense? All right, the Napoleonic Wars. And this establishes, of course, the British Empire. And they can do whatever they want now. So they take over India. And they set up something called the East India Company, okay? And the East India Company is also a nation unto itself. It is at this time, as a company, maybe the third or fourth richest nation in the world. And of course, what they do that's very important is they extract wealth from India. They basically steal a lot of wealth from India. People estimate that they've stolen like $45 trillion of wealth from India. Okay, so you can see how in 1700, before the arrival of the East India Company, India might have like a quarter of the world's GDP, but over the next 200, 300 years, their wealth will plummet, okay? The reason why is, what's gonna happen is that England will turn India into a resource colony. They will destroy the manufacturing base of India, turn it to an agricultural economy, and then force India to buy British manufactured goods, okay? So what they will do is use India to drive their industrial revolution. Okay? And as you can see, they're also forcing the Indians to pay a lot more money than their own people. And so in 1913 to 1950, the average income of Indians don't really change that much, okay? But what's really important for you to understand is this. The British could not have done this without help from the Indian people themselves, okay? So what's happening is the British, through the Bank of England, they're able to co-opt the Indian elite. Why? Because now you're able to take your wealth and then store it in England, okay? Does that make sense? Before, you couldn't really take your wealth anywhere, so your interests were aligned with the people. But now that you're able to take this wealth and then put it in England to be safe, your interests are now aligned with the British. And guess what, guys? The same strategy happened in China as well, where the Chinese local elites were helping the British establish opium trade networks throughout the country. That's why opium was able to spread so fast, okay? And guys, this system is still around today. Okay? So the British Empire may be gone, but the British system of money laundering, of stealing a nation's resources by co-opting your elite, it still exists today. Okay? So these are all places where England has these offshore private banks so that the elite of Africa, of Asia, can steal from the nation and store it in these banks. Okay?